Welcome to this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Today's conversation will be about Kathryn Bigelow's Zero Dark 30. Zero Dark 30 was written, original screenplay by Mark Boal, longtime collaborator with Kathryn Bigelow. They worked together on The Hurt Locker. And it describes what they call the greatest manhunt in history, the hunt for Osama bin Laden. And the film spans almost 8 years, and it's seen through the lens primarily of Maya, a young CIA officer, played by Jessica Chastain, and her journey in trying to uncover first the network around Osama bin Laden, and then finding and obviously eliminating Osama bin Laden when he is discovered in Pakistan. So I'd like to bring in my co-host and talk about the film further. Zero Dark 30 has, I guess we should go right away, it has had a shroud of controversy surrounding the film after its release, primarily about its depiction of torture and torture being used to gain facts and information that led to the downfall of Osama bin Laden. Many in the government and surrounding U.S. Officials have said that that was not the case. But I want to talk about how Bigelow uses torture in this film primarily. Let's forget about the facts. What do you think she's trying to say about torture in this film, if she's trying to say anything about torture in the film?
Well, I think the clearest thing you see is that it's not a black and white issue. I mean, obviously, that may seem hypocritical coming from someone like me who routinely has criticized, even if you're familiar with my views, of the U.S. government's policy on such things. But it shows that it is a way to collect information, but it's not necessarily a good way. I mean, it's very difficult. And it's very difficult for the characters involved too. As much as we see Maya put on like a stone face and go out with these such tactics when she's interrogating, afterwards you see her when she's alone just collapse and just try to like cleanse herself from such actions that she's committed. So
right.
Even though she likes, I mean, I won't say likes, I mean, even though she sees it, and sees a torture as a way to gain information and gain an advantage,
It doesn't come without a price to her.
yes, I think that's what I got out of it.
And I don't think Bigelow or Mark Boal are trying to glamorize torture. I think throughout the movie, as the movie proceeds, there's really little tidbits of how torture is not being looked upon and they have to change their tactics. So they definitely address the fact that possibly that torture was common practice and then it wasn't common practice, and I think we'll never know until these documents are released what was used and how it was used. I want to talk about the fact that it's such a familiar story. If you were alive on May 2nd, 2011, and semi-conscious, you knew what happened, and you found out rather instantly through news sources, through social media sources, of Osama bin Laden's death. So how has Kathryn Bigelow kept an audience engaged for so long, for nearly 2.5 hours, when we know the ending? How does she do it?
I think it's the Apollo 13 effect. When she really works on applying that to this movie, I think it's because it's something that the U.S. public forgot about. I mean, let's be honest. The U.S. and world public, like, we assumed Osama bin Laden's out there, but like people, and they do bring in the movie, he may be dead.
People became resigned to the fact that he was dead already, or they never find him. Right? You have the Bush famous statement of mission accomplished to the beginning of the Obama presidency. Bin Laden wasn't a big factor in the campaign of 2008.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's thrust upon the nation, and basically the global community reacts, this was a big deal. We remember why that this hunt and this search was such a big deal. And I think people are just, Bigelow's very good. We saw with Hurt Locker and her films previously, she can really create tension out of really anything. You know, just the fact that is an information leak. Are they going to spot the car and track down the signals? So she's really, really good at creating tension in moments that are even smaller than, obviously, the big final scene with the SEALs.
Oh, yeah, I mean, especially, I think cosmetically, especially because a lot of the promotional material does focus on the actual raid, people might think, oh, this is just like Hurt Locker, right?
Right.
But it really doesn't have much to do with the actual military efforts. It's about the CIA. That's 90% of the movie, right?
Yeah, and
so
I think you're misunderstanding Hurt Locker. Hurt Locker wasn't about the defusing of bombs. It was about the toll it took on these people and the adrenaline rushes they got from it.
Yeah, I agree that they're really just looking to the human psyche in these roles, but I think people just assume that this would just be like the Hurt Locker version of Zero Dark 30.
Yeah.
I mean, there are comparisons, but just like you can draw comparisons between this movie and any other psychological thriller, even like if you go back to Hitchcock or something.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah.
This has been a big year for the Academy and the Clandestine Services. 2 films featuring CIA plots.
Yes.
But this one has, surprisingly, somebody we would not expect. We have a female CIA officer who is the central role and basically the rock and the person who never gives up.
I see what you did there.
The person who never gives up, and that's Maya, played by Jessica Chastain, who has been honored in now consecutive years by the Academy. Let's talk about Jessica Chastain. She has been called the actress to watch out for, maybe this generation's Meryl Streep, and once again, she shows tenderness, strength, and really a range of emotions in this role.
I mean, because this has been admittedly a composite role of many different characters that have run out similar roles in The Hunt for the Matter, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely
I think the original source is, I think, somebody referred to as Jen in even one of the Navy SEALs books. So there is a character of this sense in the CIA. Yeah.
But like still,
person, I mean.
Yeah, that's why but like obviously it's not confirmed because unlike Argo, where all the information was eventually revealed over time,
right?
This is still very fresh, and the CIA of course isn't going to reveal such information. So Chastain has to like work on what fits in the movie rather than what's already known in history and play off that.
Right. Because
I think a big thing when you're adapting a real life event is to get the characters right. And getting a character you don't necessarily know can be all the more challenging.
And Chastain has spoken to that. She does feel more pressure when you're portraying somebody real, and especially somebody that you kind of have to honor with just the task they achieved. Regardless of your politics, it was a significant task. And she did read a couple of novels on Osama bin Laden and really entrench herself in the culture. And I really want to talk about the final scene in the film.
Yes.
The work has been done. The military plane comes. She's the only passenger. The pilot says, "You must be really important. You're the only one on there." She sits down, and then she breaks down. What do you think compelled Maya in that scene to just lose it?
I mean, they recruited her in about 2002, or that's very, very close to 2001, right?
Right. The movie starts in 2003, and maybe a couple years before that.
Yeah. So I mean, this is her life. I mean, this has been
it's been an obsession.
Yeah.
That scene when she's with Leon Panetta, played by James Gandolfini, he asks, "What have you done?" He's like, "Nothing else. I've done nothing else. This has been my life, and I need to do it because I've seen people lose their lives, and for some reason I'm still here, and I need to finish this task." What do you think the original plan was? Originally, before they found out that they did assassinate Osama bin Laden, it was going to be about the failed attempts of the manhunt.
Yeah.
So what kind of different tone do you think the movie would have taken if it had ended so inconclusively about the manhunt?
I don't think the tone would be that different. I mean, it's obviously, like you said, the ending, I mean, I think she's more relieved and like a bittersweet way at the end.
Right.
Rather than just being like, "Oh my god, we killed bin Laden." I mean, sure, there's a Chris Pratt's army character who goes "woo" at the end.
Right.
So obviously there'd be a difference in that, but
it's not overjoy reactions. There's a lot of understanding of all the suffering and all the turmoil and loss they had to go through just to get to that point. So I agree with you. I think the tone of the film would have been very similar.
Yeah.
You may not have had the last 30 minutes, and that obviously maybe something else would have came into place. But I think tonally the film would have been similar. Let's talk about the benefits that Bigelow and Mark Boal had of using basically the same crew from Hurt Locker. It must be easy for a director to be familiar, but I think it was really beneficial just for the appearance, the look of the film, the characters, the sound, really consistent of the high quality that Hurt Locker established.
And I think it was important because this is a movie that, on its scale, is definitely a lot bigger than Hurt Locker.
Right.
So if you keep the same people in place and allow them to grow into a larger scale picture like Zero Dark 30, it can help maintain the goals that they had in mind. Yeah. The vision that Kathryn Bigelow and Mark Boal have for this movie.
Yeah. And we're just going to quickly recognize a lot of the supporting actors. Jason Clarke, Dan, Kyle Chandler, we talked with Joel Edgerton and Chris Pratt and the Navy SEALs. They do a great job, convincing job in their small roles.
Yes, they're your shout-outs, okay.
And obviously Jennifer Lee, her female colleague.
Yes.
We're almost nearing the end of this edition of Inside the Academy Studio, and like always, we like to end with questions. So I ask, what was your favorite moment in Zero Dark 30?
I think it had to be the last 25, 30-minute sequence where they actually killed Bin Laden. I mean, it may sound jingoistic to a point, but I think just like I said, I mentioned Apollo 13 before, right? You really still felt the tension, like you were there, like you felt like you were a Navy SEAL in that theater.
Yeah.
And I know
just how it was shot.
Yeah, how it was shot, and the sound was always really good. I saw when I was at the theater, I saw people beside me flinching as the shots were going off. I mean, it was that close to you, that intense.
And the use of the children, there's still moments that, are breathtaking in that sequence. My favorite moment is slightly different. This is a movie that's not filled with a lot of comedy, but I incredibly enjoyed when we were when Maya first visits the Islamabad CIA station, and Kyle Chandler, the station chief, asks her, "What do you think of Pakistan?" And she goes, "It's pretty effed up." And it's a really dead tone, but I thought it was hilarious, and it's really one of the great moments in this film.
If you wanted, you could swear. I mean, we're on YouTube, we're not on it.
Okay, and now I ask you, what was your least favorite moment in Zero Dark 30?
I think my least favorite moment would have to be I know it's important to talk about the terrorism that took place in between during the search for Bin Laden, but scenes where they talk about the 7/7 bombings in London, right?
Right.
I felt like it was important to recognize, but I didn't know if you had to take an entire scene and take 4 or 5 minutes and just to talk about that for a bit. I thought it could have been just...
No, but I think it worked because, like you said, people had forgotten about it, but it's just to show that these things, kind of layered up and newer things would come up, but you could see that the CIA, were still working hard, and when these events happened, they knew that the time they had wasted and not doing their task had resulted in more fatality. So
I mean, I recognize that fatality it's an important thing to cover, but I don't know if it needed the time, and I thought it could have been done as more.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm just a fanboy for montages, I mentioned before, but
okay,
it could have been
That's
done.
Understandable.
It could have been done.
My least favorite moment was the speech given by the new CIA station chief to a bunch of the operatives, saying that there's nobody else. If you think there's a second room, we're it. And I just felt that it was almost too saccharine, too sweet of a statement, of a speech, that it really didn't fit for me in the tone of the film. It was kind of like one of those speeches you get in a...
Remember the Titans?
Remember the Titans or The Miracle. It was one of those pick-me-up speeches, but it kind of, I could have done more with, these characters recognizing that, yes, we're all alone. I don't think you had to voice it, and especially not in that manner. I don't blame the actors. I think the scene should have been written differently. One of the last things we like to do is word association. So when you think Zero Dark 30, what do you think of?
I think of Peshawar. I mean, it just shows the exoticism that exotic things that these characters had to go through to find Bin Laden, and that's the name of a city that is just an example of that.
Okay, Peshawar. You think Peshawar? I think monkeys. Once again, another humor scene in a movie that not filled with a lot of humor.
Oh yes,
the monkey taking the ice cream cone from Jason Clarke's character. So when we think of Zero Dark 30, we think of Peshawar and monkeys. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Thank you.